All right, today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and, let's be honest, controversial ideas in the study of power, Law 11. And it hits you with a real paradox right from the start, the idea that true freedom, true independence, might not come from being totally self-reliant. Instead, it might come from making other people rely on you. Now, that feels a bit backward, maybe even a little manipulative, but understanding how this works is absolutely crucial for navigating any kind of power structure, whether we're talking about ancient history or your own career.
Just think about that for a second. It goes against almost everything we're taught, right? We're always told, be independent, stand on your own 2 feet. But this law turns that on its head. It suggests that to really lock in your position, to get that real leverage and freedom to move, you have to become a vital piece of someone else's puzzle. A piece so essential that they would never, ever dream of getting rid of it.
And there it is, the judgment of the law, laid out plain and simple. See, this isn't about being liked, it's about being necessary. The core idea is that your power is directly tied to how much other people need you for their own well-being, their own success. The second you're no longer needed, your value just plummets, and that's when you become vulnerable. This one principle really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about, starting with a pretty stark warning.
To really get a feel for how important this law is, we first have to look at what happens when you completely ignore it. And the story of the Count of Carmagnola, man, it's a brutal but really effective lesson in what happens when you let yourself become replaceable, no matter how skilled you think you are. So back in the early 15th century, this guy, the Count of Carmagnola, he was basically a rock star general, a mercenary or condottiere, and he was the best in the business. The powerful city-state of Venice hired him, and he just kept delivering. Victory after victory, he became this huge public hero. He was at the absolute top of his game, the peak of his power and influence.
What's so wild about this timeline is just how fast it all came crashing down. I mean, for years, he's the celebrated hero of Venice. But by 1442, things have changed. The wars are won, the immediate danger is gone, and all of a sudden, this powerful independent general starts to look less like an asset and more like a threat. Their fear of his power started to be bigger than their need for his skills. So what do? They trick him. They lure him back to Venice with fake promises of a big celebration. And the moment he gets there, the trap snaps shut. He's arrested, convicted on some bogus treason charge, and executed in public. Just like that. A swift, brutal lesson in what happens when you're no longer needed.
So, the key takeaway here is this. Carmagnola's mistake wasn't a lack of skill. He was brilliant. His failure was not understanding the huge difference between being valuable and being irreplaceable. Yeah, his military genius was valuable, but once the war was over, that value was in the past. He hadn't woven himself into the political fabric of Venice. He hadn't made them depend on him for anything except fighting, and the fighting was over. He was a tool they didn't need anymore, so they just got rid of him.
And this just perfectly illustrates the two sides of the coin for this law. On one side, you've got the tragic story of Carmagnola, a warning about being disposable. And on the other side, you have the absolute grandmaster of this game, Otto von Bismarck, a guy who built an entire empire by making himself the single most necessary person in it. So let's take a look at how he pulled it off.
Now, Bismarck's story isn't just about grabbing power. Now, it's about completely rewriting the relationship between a ruler and their advisor, until it's not even clear who's really calling the shots. This is Law 11 in its highest, most advanced form.
The scene here is everything. Bismarck didn't walk into a court with a strong, decisive leader. He found a power vacuum. King Frederick William IV was all over the place, anxious, indecisive, totally overwhelmed. But for Bismarck, this weakness wasn't a problem. It was a golden opportunity. It was the crack in the wall that he was going to use to build his own fortress. And he had a clear playbook. First, he got inside the king's head, understood all his fears. Second, he didn't just sell himself as a competent advisor, he sold himself as the only solution, the one guy strong enough to handle the messy business of politics. Third, and this is the absolute genius move, he wove himself into every single critical part of the government, foreign policy, domestic issues, military strategy, you name it. And finally, he got to the point where the very idea of him leaving would mean the whole project of a unified Germany would just collapse.
And the outcome was a complete reversal of power. The king, and later his son, became totally reliant on Bismarck. They couldn't make a decision without him. Bismarck didn't ask for permission to unify Germany. He just made himself so indispensable that the king had no other choice but to go along with it, and eventually name him the first chancellor of the German Empire. He held all the cards because he had become the table itself.
So, okay, how does someone actually do this? Bismarck gives us the big picture strategy, but the law also offers a kind of toolkit with specific tactics. Let's break down the different ways you can actually create this kind of dependency.
At the end of the day, it really boils down to three main pillars. You can have a talent that is so unique, so rare, that nobody else can do what you do. Or you can control information that's vital for your boss's success. Or you can do the Bismarck method. Integrate yourself so deeply into the whole system that pulling you out would cause the entire thing to unravel.
Let's look at unique talent first. Michelangelo was famously difficult. I mean, he was moody, arrogant, a real pain to work with. And Pope Julius II, a powerful and impatient guy himself, was constantly arguing with him. But he could never fire him. Why? Because there was only one Michelangelo. Period. Only he had the genius to create the masterpiece the Pope wanted. His talent was basically a monopoly, and that made him untouchable.
Now for secret knowledge. This is such a clever story. A royal astrologer for King Louis XI fell out of favor, and the king decided, that's it, I'm having him executed. So he calls the guy in and says, prove your skills one last time. Predict the day you're going to die. And the astrologer, thinking on his feet, says, I shall die just 3 days before your majesty. Instantly, the king's plan is ruined. By linking their fates together, the astrologer made his own survival totally essential to the king's.
And we see this third tactic, the web weaving, in a more modern context with someone like Henry Kissinger. As national security advisor, he didn't just stick to foreign policy. He got involved in everything: domestic issues, political strategies, secret communications. He became the central hub for information and action. So getting rid of him wouldn't be like firing one advisor, it would be like shutting down the entire administration's brain, creating total chaos.
Okay, so we've seen how the law works. We've seen the cautionary tale and the masterclass. But there's one last really crucial piece to this puzzle. And this is where the law shows its deepest, most paradoxical truth about what power really is.
I mean, it seems like the ultimate power move, right? You're secure, you're powerful, you're free. But this kind of power, well, it has a hidden cost. There's a psychological price you pay for being the one everyone else depends on.
And this is the fundamental trade-off. When you make someone dependent on you, you are in a way controlling them. And people can feel that. They might respect your skills, they might be afraid of losing you, but it's probably not going to lead to genuine friendship or love. The relationship becomes a transaction. It's based on need, not on warmth. You risk becoming a function, a really valuable tool that they can't throw away, but a tool nonetheless. And that can be a very lonely place to be.
And this is the ultimate reversal, the very core of Law 11. By making your superior completely dependent on you, you flip the power dynamic on its head. Sure, you might technically be the one with the lower title, but they're the ones who can't operate without you. They effectively become your slave. So the final question isn't just about how to get power, but what it really means to have it. When you're the one pulling all the strings, are you truly free? Or have you just become a prisoner of your own indispensability?